So today we're doing another 7 thing to the criminally underrated in Cyberpunk 2077, but this time it's exclusive to Phantom Liberty. And without wasting too much time, let's start with the first thing about Phantom Liberty that is super underrated, which is the Relic skill tree. To get these, you have to come across them in Dogtown on these terminals, which will net you 1 Relic skill point you can use in your skill tree. And to be more specific, what makes these skills and the skill tree itself underrated is how theory crafty it can get. We'll get back to why these skills are incredible even without all the bonuses, but the Relic skill tree is meant to enhance your pre-existing cyberware mods such as like mantis blades and monowire and stuff like that. And to be honest, it does a lot more than you think when you're playing on hard or very hard. Like the mantis blades, for example, this first skill, jailbreak, effectively lets you chain kill enemies after performing a finisher or dismembering an enemy, which will happen like 100 times out of 100. So you don't need to worry about stamina consumption for melee attacks, since it'll automatically charge to the next enemy that's closest to you. But each individual skill connected to jailbreak does something for every cyberware arm upgrade, and I use all of them. The monoware upgrade has a sort of like transfer effect, and it's mostly effective when you're playing against netrunners. The projectile launch upgrade gives you an extra launch capacity, and when you combine that with the axolotl upgrade that reduces the cooldown for cyberware upgrades, it just makes it like fun as hell to consistently double jump and launch rockets if you're fighting a big group of enemies. The shockwave effect on the gorilla arms works kind of like an AoE attack, but I think it's best used when fighting bosses or those skull enemies, since knocking them back gives you extra time to do follow-up attacks. And then the mantis blades, that gives you an extra bonus on top of what you already get from jailbreak. Essentially makes it like completely broken in the state it is right now. Now, as you can tell, I only focus on playing with the mantis blades and projectile launch for this playthrough, and it's because you have to keep going back and forth to the Ripper Dock to install which arm you want to use, and I hope they change that in the next Cyberpunk, because I really want to play with all of these arms whenever I feel like it. Me personally, I could care less how realistic it is to actually need to change your cyberware upgrades and go get them installed the correct way or whatever. I just want to play with all 4 of them all the time whenever I feel like it. And me, I don't really like one over the other. I like them all. But yeah, I think the skill tree is super underrated, and I think it's added a lot more depth to Cyberpunk's sort of like theory craftiness that you can do in the cyberware builds. Then you have the vulnerability analytics skill, by far my favorite singular skill in the entire Relic skill tree. Basically what it does is it shows you this little diamond spot on an enemy's weak spot, and if you take out that weak spot, it has a guaranteed critical hit chance, which is really good for like big Militech or Dogtown robots. I forget what they're called, but you know, those big ass robots with 2 machine gun arms. I will admit though, it's not practical to go for the weak points on regular enemies, since dealing headshots in most cases and in most builds will probably grant you critical damage no matter what. But it does add a sort of like a EMP blast effect that can also damage enemies that are close to the blast, and that's probably its more useful trait than dealing critical damage. The other 3 Relic skills here are kind of whatever really. I mean, I do use them fairly often, but they're more like background bonuses that I don't really think about. But I still love the entire skill tree overall. I mean, straight up, like many of the things I've mentioned before, it's one of those things that CDPR has added with Phantom Liberty that increases the replay value of Cyberpunk tenfold. And a lot of these little things that CDPR has added, I feel like get overshadowed by the big set pieces of Phantom Liberty. But you know, when you look under the hood, you realize that they put a lot of effort into pretty much everything that they've added, and I feel like the skill tree is one of the best of them. But to touch on the other side of this, which is the cyberware upgrades themselves, is actually my next point. So one of the things that I like most in video games is trying different builds and using completely different weapons or upgrades to see which one of them I vibe with the most. And Cyberpunk's cyberware build variety was already like basically perfect before Phantom Liberty came out, but with the addition of the new mods that are very in-game kind of mods, like in terms of their requirements and stuff, but with the addition of these new mods, I've had to completely rethink how I spec my V and what kind of builds I want to do. I mean, I can go on forever and ever about my thought process when I'm at the Ripper Dock trying to figure out what works best for what I'm trying to go for. For example, I usually use one of the iconic operating systems like the Sandevisant or Berserk to start off my build. which would typically dictate what I use for in my frontal cortex as my net running options. But with the addition of the Chrome compressor, which adds at least 60 base Cyberware capacity before upgrading it, I kind of just cave and break down my whole build for that mod alone, because you have no idea how many times I've had to remove a mod, find a replacement that's not as good, but it costs less mod space so I can equip another mod that's more important for my build. And it's just like, man, if I had like at least 30 more Cyberware capacity, we'd be in business. But of course, I didn't have that option at the time, or not at least until they added this mod. And then there's the new like Kuroshi optics that adds, or sorry, it increases critical chance by 35%. Like, bro, 35%? Do you know how handy that comes in on something like very hard difficulty when enemies just eat bullets like it's lunch? But then I can't stop there, because for hands you have the immovable force mod, which is quite literally just a better version of shock absorber, the recoil mod. And then it also has another passive benefit from shooting behind cover that used to be tied to other perks and the reflexes. But then you also have the asymmetric stabilizer, which reduces all attacks like stamina cost by 18%. I'm like, all right, I gotta have that. But then there's also the electromag recycler, which gives you I think it gives you a 4% health and stamina boost when hitting enemies with a fully charged tech weapon. And I'm just like, man, I gotta have that too, especially if I have a tech build. They also added a new leg mod, which lets you sprint faster. I forget what percentage it was, maybe like 30% or something like that. And I'm gonna be honest, if you have dash unlocked, even if it's like the base dash, like dash 1, this is straight up useless, and I can't even pretend like it's a good mod. But then you have the peripheral inverse, where enemies do less damage the closer they are to you. And I'm like, of course I have to have that, right? Because I like to get in there. And then there's also one of my favorite mods, Chitin, which it adds an additional health regen of at least 10%. And I'm like, okay, again, I have to have it. Like, I have to have all of these, man. They're all so good. But it's also good that most of them fit in the same role in each of their separate systems. So picking all of them doesn't automatically make your build just good. You're still going to need things like Blood Pump. You're still going to need things like the Korenikov, right? But they make every Cyberware build so interesting to build out, and really think about what you're willing to sacrifice to add some of these more powerful mods, and it's just perfect. Whatever team at CDPR was in charge of the Cyberware stuff, they need a raise. And also, pretty please do not go to like a live service studio, because you could teach those guys a thing or two in the live service teams about build optimization and balance. I'm gonna have to cut a bit of this out because I'm just starting to ramble about Cyberware for like 10 minutes, but let's see here. The next underrated point about Phantom Liberty is the level verticality in Dogtown, and I was actually really excited to talk about this. And I don't mean like level design, I mean actually like the steepness of Dogtown. The Dogtown gate is the lowest point of Dogtown, and as you move further into the area, it just gets higher up as you go, and all of that is without elevators. This is something that I think Dogtown has over Night City, because in Night City, to get on higher or lower elevation, 99% of the times you have to use an elevator, whereas in Dogtown there's just higher slopes or roads that are slightly like inclined or declined, and it feels more natural, kind of like a low and middle and higher sections of elevation without needing to just always rely on the elevator. Now, me personally, I would prefer more like staircases and ladders, or even just climbable crates and boxes to get from point A to B, and that's exactly what Dogtown does, and that's usually how I get around. It's also meant that I've been less incentivized to use a fast travel every time I'm near one, because I'll just go, let me just hop down here and then hop down there and then hop down there, and then I'm good. And anything that helps with the flow of a region and encourages you to travel by like, I don't know, traditional means and not just fast travel all over the place, anything that helps with that is a positive. And this is definitely something that I never see anyone really talk about. Let's move on though to my next point, which is the loot drops or airdrops that happen in Dogtown. At first I thought they were just random activities that they randomize to happen about every 20 minutes or so, but I think the airdrops contain some of the best loot and rewards from anything else in the entire game. Now these airdrops you have to get to are usually guarded by badass soldiers, and you have to take them out before they loot it for themselves. But after you take all of them out, you can jack in and quick hack unlock the drop box. And I swear, every goddamn one of these, at least like the first 20 or so, have some like special iconic weapon or level progression shard that makes it just like the best activity to farm for XP and just like loot in general. The first iconic weapon I got from these drops was the Leica revolver, and I was like, man, this revolver, I hate revolvers, because I didn't really like revolvers in this game before I played with some of the iconic ones. And so I shot it a couple times to test it out, and then I shot a couple of bad guys on the street, and then of course I was like, you know what, no, I actually really like this one, and I instantly knew I had to add it to my loadout and try it a bit more. And then there was another iconic I got from another drop, which was an automatic shotgun with a burn effect, I think. And yeah, when I play with weapons like this, it really makes me hate the fact that Cyberpunk doesn't have a weapon wheel system like in GTA, because every iconic is so fun to use. And since these airdrops drop multiple times throughout the day and at different locations, it feels like there's always something to do and for some pretty good stuff. So I mean, it's just very well executed overall. And one of the best things about Phantom Liberty is that it has really good repeatable content and for good rewards. So I really like the system. All right, so number 5 is vendor encounters and NPC depth. That's what I wrote. We'll start with the vendor encounters. One thing I didn't like about the vendors in the base game of Cyberpunk is, I guess, just kind of how stale they all felt. Like they all delivered the same little boring dialogue lines like drones, and you may as well replace them with robots. Outside of the like odd Ripper doc that's tied to a side quest or even a main quest like Victor and who's the other one, Fingers. Most of them are like, they're like, I don't know, hey, I hate you, hurry up and buy something. Or they're like, yes, you've come to the right place for weapons. You know, it's just a massive step back from how I remembered like the blacksmiths and the herbalist or from The Witcher 3. They have definitely fixed that here in the DLC, and every vendor encounter feels unique. They all have personality. Some of them are a bit goofy, but I really dig all of the encounters and how much more human they all feel compared to before. NPC depth I wrote down here. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know what I meant by that. I do like the side quests a hell of a lot more than the base game, so maybe that was it. It's kind of pointless to single that out though, because like all of the characters present in Dogtown, even down to the bums on the street talking to each other, have more emotional depth than the base game as a whole. At least that's what I think. And number 6 will be the vehicle contracts. I love doing these, even though it's the same thing over and over again with slight variation. Like sometimes the vehicle mission is a time limit mission. I probably like those the best, to be honest. And then there's also your standard lose the pursuit or defeat enemies missions. There's also one that I only got like twice before, where you have to deliver the car in a very good condition, so like not beat up or anything. That means no ramming people off the road. Actually, I just figured it out. You know what it is? I think it's because I always use like the same 7 to 8 or 9 cars, and so I'm forced to use these cars that I would have never used otherwise. That's probably why I haven't gotten bored of them. And last but not least, the 7th thing that's underrated in Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty is the Barghest Outpost. Also, I know it's actually pronounced Barghest, but Barghest is just easier to say, and I don't sound like a pirate while saying it. But I mainly added this one to the list because the layout of each one is, I don't know what word to use, like I guess dynamic almost. I'll avoid calling it level design because I'm not very knowledgeable about what that even means, and I don't have the confidence to just spew and act like I have a clue of what I'm talking about. All of the Barghest outposts play so differently from each other, and the interior of all of them just looks awesome. My only complaint here is that you can't redo them on repeat and maybe like crank the difficulty each time you complete it. That would have been a fun idea and added even more replay value to Phantom Liberty. But as they are right now, I really do like them, and I'm disappointed every time I complete them all and I run out of ones to do. But that's another 7 criminally underrated things in Cyberpunk 2077, but this time focusing on the Phantom Liberty expansion. I think when we look back in 10 years and look at this game with rose-tinted glasses, we'll all appreciate it more than we are right now. Cyberpunk as a whole is massively underrated by a lot of people simply from what happened with its launch. And I'm not saying that people aren't entitled to holding to their opinions about the game from their first experience, but it would be disingenuous to act like this game hasn't made massive strides to being one of the best open world games we've seen since like 2018 with Red Dead 2. But before I start preaching and going on and on, let me know what y'all thought of my list. And also, if you have anything to add that I didn't mention, or if you disagreed with something that I said, then as always, leave your thoughts in the comments. But anyways, that's it for me. I'll see you next time.